Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can find me on Instagram as Skeindeer and I'm Skeindeer Knits as a designer on Ravelry. And there's also the Ravelry group, which is the best place to take part in knit-alongs and giveaways and the community and getting in touch and all that stuff is happening over there. So yeah, welcome to my knitting podcast or knitting talk show where I sit and talk about knitting for about an hour, hopefully on a weekly basis, which right now kind of looks like I'm back on track with that, but don't get used to it. But yeah, I just talk about what I knit, what I make, what I design, the yarn I buy, all that sort of thing, which I've been doing now for 5 years. I forgot to mention that I've been talking about this whole 10-year London anniversary, and I forget, I actually started this after the summer of 2016. 5 years! 5 years Skeindeer Knits. That literally just occurred to me. This was not on my schedule. This is just coming out now. So yeah, cool. Hi. So what's on the program today? Well, first I have to do my due diligence and mention the Skeindeer Knits Garment Cal of 2021, which you can take part in by making one or several of my garment patterns during the year of 2021. That's it. And then you enter it in the to be created finished object thread in my Ravelry group. And you can also donate prices if you are a maker. So if you sell, I don't know, yarn or something like that, that's something you can get in touch with me, message me on, say, Ravelry or something, then that works. So let's just get to the thing that we're all looking at today, this whole situation here. What is this? What's happened? Who is she? This is the worsted Utra yoke pullover. Why so many words? Well, technically Utra was a drop shoulder sleeve sweater from, was it 2019 I did that? I think so. So it's 2 years ago. It just popped up in my head and I knew how to knit it. And then I made the fingering weight. Well, they're both fingering weight, but then I made a yoke cardigan version of that. And then right before I was going to defend my PhD thesis, I'm the kind of person who gets either really motivated by deadlines or really just want to do anything else. And there's no in between. And so that was the week where I also felt really drawn to making a garden patio, a patio garden. And also got this idea of doing a worsted weight ultra. And I wasn't going to do it. I was like, I have too many things going, too many designs planned, got summer collection coming up. There's no way. But I can't just sit down and do the spreadsheet, which is how I start my designs. I just line up the sizes, get the numbers in, see how it works, leave the difficult things for later. And I just did that. I just started, got my template, filled in the numbers, and I'm like, these numbers are happening alarmingly easily. Now, for those of you who don't design yokes, this is maybe not something that you may or may not be aware of, but yokes are notoriously hard to design. Sometimes the increase rate just does not add up with the measures that you want across different places over the kind of shoulder, arch, whatever, at the same time as the chart repeat across sizes that makes it sort of, fit a sort of size system. This is hard. This is numbers. It's very mathy. It's very spreadsheety, which I do love my good spreadsheet, but this came together so easily. It's a bit suspicious, actually, how easily it came together. I'm like, no, wait, it's just adding up. I think it helps that this is an 8-stitch repeat that can become a 4-stitch repeat in some places. That really gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So yeah, the numbers just worked right away. I didn't have to sit up super late to make something that was really hard work for this one particular size here and there. It is all just, you don't know what that feeling's like, but it's a good one. So I saw that as a sign from the yarn deities that I'm allowed to cast on, right? So I cast on this thing here. I did this whole cardigan. This is, a worsted weight ultra cardigan. And the colorwork, I didn't stop. I just kept going. So basically what we have here is 2 patterns, a cardigan and a pullover. This is what you do when things just fall in line like that, and when they're just easy, you just gotta. So, yeah, this is the back. Got a bit of short row shaping so that you get that nice little drop in the front, so it's gonna sit very nice. So what this means is you can do a full over color work for either the pullover or the cardigan, or you could just do the color work for the yoke for the pullover or the cardigan. And you may be a little bit scared of this whole like all over colorwork thing, but I'm trying to think if I've actually ever done a full-on colorwork garment ever. Let me just check what did the Christmas jumper last year? That was the thing. I did the vest, technically counts, no sleeves, but you know, some things with lice. And I did the eyeliner, so I guess I've done it sometimes, and usually it's not the quickest thing. So hear me out here. As someone who takes a long time to do a full-on colorwork garment, this thing took a week. A week where I was mostly busy preparing for my PhD defense. This is quick. Let me button it up for you so it's going to look a little bit nicer and you don't have to see all the, you know, the float situation. And also, for someone who is worried about floats, I mean, I always keep saying don't be, because floats are just floats. Like, the Utra pattern is pretty cool for float management because the repeats are very short. So as you can see here, there's no really any big gaps of either just blue or yellow, right? The biggest gap I think is 3 stitches. That's not a very long float. You're probably not going to catch a finger in there. Here we go. Look at that. She's all buttoned up now. So this thing took me a week. I couldn't believe it either. This is, I get this every time I say something like that and people are like, oh, but that's you, Ellie. No, it's not. I've never done this. I'm as shocked as anyone would be. It's quick. It helps that it's worsted weight. I get to use, you know, big ass needles and carry on. And the chart, it's the chart. Basically the chart is easy, it's memorizable. There's just no big mystery here. Like I actually, when I was knitting on the yoke for this on the plane, I hadn't brought my pattern with me. But I had a photo and I just remember the rest. So it's that easy. At this point, actually, after one repeat of this cardigan, I didn't even look at the chart. I just knew, kind of could see further what I've done, and it's just that easy. It's very memorizable, and that makes it go so fast because you don't have to like constantly revisit the chart. You just sort of like take a quick look. It's like, oh, it's that section. I know that section. I love that. Even full-on colorwork sleeves I went quickly. I can't say that much either. So there, ha. But even if you're not, you know, too convinced that you can totally do this, even though you totally can, you can just do colorwork for the yoke. That's going to be an option too. So the yarn that I used for this cardigan is no surprise to anyone. It is Hillesvåg Vidde, which I've been using for so many things lately. I just love it. It's their worsted weight pelt wool lambswool blend. It's got lovely colors. It feels really nice. It's very warm and just, it's nice. I also got some buttons. I always get my buttons when I go home in Norway. So for anyone who always wants to find out where I get them, I literally can't tell you because I just pick them up in random shops that I go to. If you want to look for buttons like these, I'd search for Norwegian pewter buttons. So that's the worsted weight cardigan, and here's the worsted weight pullover. And the yarn I used here is the Rerum Natura, pronunciation, not sure, Gilead. I love Gilead. I've talked about it so many times before. It's a great yarn. It's very soft, and I did deliberately choose it for the pullover because, surprise, 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 cardigan has a steek. I've been starting the process of tacking down the steek, which I rarely bother doing, which I'm doing here because I just happen to have a quite long end, so I could just do that. It's really not necessary when you're working with these very woolly yarns. They're like Velcro yarns. They just stick to themselves. They don't want to unravel. The more you wear them, the less likely they are to unravel because they're just slightly felt every time. But I can't really say the same thing for this Gilead yarn because I tried that in the past. I mean, I was knitting the Lady Marble cardigan and I loved this yarn already back then. It was my first time knitting with it. But I knew right from the start that this isn't a steekable yarn. What I mean by that is you can steek it, but you have to sew to secure it. So that's what I did, which to me usually means getting someone else to do it because I am still not that steady on the sewing machine. So I decided to use the Rerum Natura for the pullover. So this is all Gilead and it's really nice and soft. They use this lovely non-superwash merino, so it's like kind of half rustic and half soft and squishy. It's very round yarn. It's amazing for textured knits, but turns out pretty good for color work as well. So it's quite defined. Their color palette is chef's kiss, and it was really hard to choose colors for this. I even, when I finally landed, I had like 2 options, and with some persuasion from my flatmate, we just agreed to choose the one that's slightly outside of my comfort zone, so that these 2 don't look exactly identical. Which I'm really glad that she talked me into, because now I can show you the sheer variety here, because there's nothing stopping you from doing a cardigan that looks like this jumper if you get the cardigan pattern, or the other way around. So yeah, I went with this color combination. I got it from Isolde Teague's shop while they were still selling yarn. May that yarn shop rest in peace, because I don't know how I'm going to cope without it, to be honest. And I got a little note from one of the shopkeepers saying they love the color, so thank you. The pressure's on now, so I had to make something good. But I already had the plans of making this. I wasn't sure that I was going to use all 3 colors, because that's the difference here, obviously. There's 2 colors, a 3 color thingy. The only difference is that I just substituted the yellow with grey for the stripes. If I get closer, you can see there's a pretty clear system here. Behold. So that's basically the whole thing there. So I'm not gonna like specifically point that out in the chart, because you can pretty much see that, and it's not. Maybe I will. Maybe I have. Who's to know? But yeah, this is the jumper. I am so happy with this. I'm so glad I made this, because I mean, part of me is just like, the ultra is done. I did the cardigan. It's like we've been there, but I just had so much fun showing how different the ultra can be made, and I love just like how just on a it's just not holding back on the Norwegian-ness. It's very Norway core. So I'm very happy about that as well. You know, it brings me a bit closer to home when I can't go as much as I usually would be able to. So there, that's our worsted weight ultra. So I say worsted weight. This means it has an 18 stitch gauge. There will probably be heavy DKs you could use. There's probably going to be iron yarns you can use. I'm going to put a discount code here for people who want to get both the cardigan and the pullover, and I just write the information here because I can't remember, and the brain is just not here today. It's just, it never really is. But anyway, that's pretty much the summary of these 2 patterns. They were incredibly quick to make. They were really fun. They don't really require a whole lot of thinking, and they are 2 separate patterns, because the write-up for a cardigan is like completely different from the write-up for a pullover. Because the way I do pullovers is I try to put the seam of the colorwork kind of where you're least likely to look. So for me, that's like where there's like a shoulder seam. I think it's on this side. If it's not on this side, it should be on this side. Yeah, there we are. Oh, that's really hideous. I'm so sorry. So when it goes along there, it's not in the middle of the back, so it doesn't like draw your eyes to that. But that does mean it's like off the side for the short rows. It's warm. Maybe that's a chance to try on the cardigan. Oh, this is such a lovely jumper though. Warm, but yeah, lovely. So now I can show you kind of what it looks like, just like this. It's very simple, straightforward shape. It's raining now. I was thinking about recording outside. I guess I'm glad I'm not doing that now. Foresight. Did not have foresight yesterday. I went to Hyde Park and I knew it was gonna rain. Did not bring an umbrella or a raincoat, and it rained so much. But yeah, there we are. Just the worsted weight ultra pullover. And now we try the cardigan, because nobody gets to cool down in this household. I keep saying how much I love cardigans because I don't have to do this, but here we are. So here's she. This is the cardigan. I just love this with color work all over. It's so cool. I would also love to see someone, and probably some of my test knitters already have, do this with like a lower contrast. I think that would be really cool as well. Like, or maybe just these colors. I can't be doing more on that. I think this is enough for now. But let me just get up and show you. This is like, oh, this is like the situation happening here. Very nice. Obviously you can just continue the length because it's like a very sort of infinity chart. You can see how it's like, there's like a little section here, and then there's a repeat from here, and then like here, and then it's like, you just carry on the length you want. There's nothing specific there. We also have some central double decreases for the sleeve so that the chart doesn't look too wonky, because obviously doing sleeves, it's not like the chart's ever going to add up, so you just kind of want to make it look as invisible as can be. It's never going to be a perfect solution with color work for sleeves. I'm amazed the number of times people ask me about this, with like, oh, the chart will not add up for the sleeve, and I'm like, think about it. You're decreasing 2 stitches every so often, or increasing 2 stitches every so often. How would that work? with when you're consistently using a, say, 8-stitch repeat chart. It's not gonna, you know, if you want to take out 8 stitches at a time, is that, if you want to do that, be my guest, it's gonna look interesting, is all I'm saying. So yeah, that's that. That's the knitting lesson today. A little bit obnoxious. I'm sorry I'm like this, but this is why you tuned in, isn't it? But there is the worsted weight ultra cardigan and pullover. And yeah, the discount code information should have been on screen already if I didn't mention it. I don't remember if I mentioned it in a clip I was gonna do that with, one I was gonna include, because this is the mode today. I'm boiling. But yeah, there was actually another pattern I was also really excited to show you guys today, and I will still do it, but I could not for the life of me find it anywhere, which is probably why I'm running hot, because I had to turn my entire bedroom upside down to try and find this thing, and I couldn't. No idea where it is. It's somewhere in this house, flat, apartment, but I have no clue where I put it. I know I brought it back with me after I took it to Norway to photograph, and no idea where I put it. Not a clue, but I can show you photos. Ta-da. It's a cowl. It's the Endeløs cowl. I sat for a long time coming up with a name for that one, and that's probably the main reason it was a little bit delayed. I'm sorry about that. So this is the first pattern in the Skeindeer Matchy Accessory Club, which I can never forgive myself for naming it that, but that's the name that we went with, and I'm gonna stick by that. You know, when I'm like a big business, I'm gonna outsource the naming. But you know what? Endeløs was not that bad. I've had a lot of other problems with names. The Matchy Accessory Club is just it's not on. But Endeløs I thought was cool because it means endless, because it's like an endless pattern repeat, right? It's an infinity chart, if you will. And that means you can knit it to the length that you want. You know, there's never really going to be a place that chart stops. I've also put in a small note of how many centimeters you'd be adding if you want to increase or decrease the circumference. Right, I'm going to open the door because it's raining and I love the sound of rain, and I hope you do too. Is that just an excuse for me to cool down? It's a nice sound though. There's something about being inside when it's raining. I can't recommend being outside in the rain. Just speaking from experience, a very recent experience. But being inside when it rains, just blissful. So the cowl is made in Navia Duo and Rauma Finull. Two big favorites of mine that I come back to all the time because I think they're great yarns, and if you can't get hold of one, you can go get hold of the other, maybe. There's a number of yarn shops that carry them, and if you don't want to use that yarn, there is Hillesvågas, there is Sandnes Line, there's like Dukewool fingerings, a lot of just like generally kind of sport weight, 2-fingering weight, woolen spun, non-superwash wool yarns. But having said that, it's a cowl. Like, just use the yarn that you like. I'm just saying this is the yarn that you could substitute with to get the same kind of result that I got, but I'm not the boss of you, so if you want to use anything else, go ahead. I do think people are generally happier with the result that they get when they use these sort of non-superwash yarns. Definitely like kind of the more woolen spun. In fact, today's a great learning opportunity to see the difference between woolen spun and worsted spun. I had not thought about that. My goodness, this is like I'm coming back to my old form here. Woolen spun. We're gonna get close again. You're gonna get close up of the left boob. This is woolen spun. So you can see here, how the yarn just kind of makes, it just fills in. It's not like a whole lot of stitch definition. This is my sleeve. I need to straighten that up. So it just kind of fills in. There's a lot of hairs, there's a lot of fuzz, there's a lot of halo, and it just kind of becomes a fabric. It doesn't feel like you've been working with two distinct yarns, really. It just feels like a whole cohesive piece. Whereas worsted spun, you get a lot of stitch definition here, so you can see sort of a bigger difference. Maybe this isn't the best learning opportunity I thought it would be. So you can see here much more stitch definition. Kind of unfair because I'm having much more high contrast here, so that doesn't maybe show, but you know what, whatever you see is the difference. I'm not going to tell you what you're seeing, but that's generally the difference. And some people really love this with Colorwork. I always recommend Woolen Spun. I think people are happier, especially if they struggle with Colorwork tension to begin with, that Woolen Spun will definitely help you there. But the worsted spun, it gives a very nice stitch definition and it pops a lot. But I do also find that you often need thicker yarn to make this look as nice as this. But one thing that's like generally the difference is when you got worsted spun yarn, I find that I can't use as fine yarn as I need to use for woolen spun yarn. So when woolen spun, that's when I can make those shawls, you know, that have like huge, like lots of lace and garter, but I use massive needles for like fingering weight yarn. And it works really well because it's woolen spun, it just all sticks together and you don't get like what feels like almost like a fishnet, you know. But I don't necessarily have so much of that freedom with worsted spun, I find. So there I tend to prefer to opt for thicker yarns relative to how loose the gauge is. So I wouldn't necessarily have gotten away with using a lighter weight worsted spun yarn for this jumper, but I probably could have gotten away with that for here. And I did. This has been accounted for in the pattern, don't you worry, but I had I wasn't going to admit this, but this is going to prove my point. So we're doing it anyway. I went through this huge hoo-ha to get a friend of mine to send me more of this light grey vidda. Because I had one skein, but I figured I'm going to need 2. Or did I have 2 or need 3? I don't remember. It's good. The artist in the pattern is not in here. And do you think I picked that yarn once it was finally sent to me? Once I had someone actually do me that massive favour? No, for some reason, I picked Sol, which is much finer than vidda. And it took me until I was down like here or something to realise, wow, that light grey skein sure lasted a lot longer than the purple one. Which, to be fair, the contrast colour tend to last longer because you're using it less. It's generally more purple happening here. So it was a bit suspicious and I kept looking at him like, this is awfully fine. I don't think this is vidda. I really don't think it is. So I got together a caked up yarn of vidda and a caked up yarn of Sol, so they're more comparable, and I'm like, I have been knitting this whole thing in Sol, which is a sport leaning DK, or just sport weight. Some would call it sport, I'd say sport leaning DK. It's not worsted, and it worked out really well. So I could have frogged, and maybe you'd argue that I should have frogged, but I didn't. I carried on, and this is kind of what you get. Like, it's still holding together, it's still looking like a great fabric. So that's kind of a big difference between worsted and woolen spun. So I'm using my mistake as a teaching moment. In my defense, I was just defending my PhD thesis that was like 7 years of work, so you know, it's that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. But I couldn't have done that. If I had accidentally grabbed my balls of Ulysses, which I happen to have, which is more of the same weight that Sol is, and I have almost that color, so I could have done that. This would have not worked out. That would have just, you just don't do that. But you can do that with woolen spun because it's so fuzzy and halo-y that you almost can't tell. Like, I couldn't tell until now. I mean, look at that. So, the things you can get away with. And I usually have a bit of anxiety about mixing yarns. I don't know if you knew that. I feel very funny about combining different yarns and different weights and different things, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna feel different, it's gonna be old, it's gonna annoy me, it's gonna... So if anything should, you know, help me get over that part, this cardigan's gonna be it, right? Still a little bit hung up over that, but I think probably a bit less now that I've done it all over a whole Colorwork cardigan. I generally thought about frogging it, but it had gone so quickly to knit up this thing, so I was like, yeah, we're carrying on. We're just gonna keep doing it, so... I am very happy with my result. It is certainly a contributor to why it's so light, but I've also, you know, done the maths and test knitting data to find out like how much more yarn I would have needed if I had used vidda, and it's really not all that different. So it's still a very nice and light yarn, I think. For a Norwegian worsted to Aran yarn, this yarn has actually quite a lot of meters per gram. So usually you wouldn't get something like 200 meters per 100 grams for that in Norway. I remember this when I was only knitting Norwegian yarns and I was on quite a budget, and I was like really trying to find yarns where you can cram in a lot of meters per gram. That was kind of my thing, spreadsheets and all. And yeah, it's really hard. They often go down to something like 80 to 70 or even something 60 meters per 100 grams. So this is given you get so many meters per grams or yards per ounces or whatever you guys do over there. That's why you get such a nice light cardigan in the end. And that's great when you do all over Colorwork, because they can get pretty massive. And then you use lighter yarn, but then they become really slow to make. And this is just such a nice trade-off. We're gonna get to know each other a lot this winter, aren't we? Yes, we are. But moving on, I was talking about the cowl. I think I said everything I needed to say about the cowl. This is all very, I mean, I hope you care about both these patterns, because it's just all mixed up now. This is what you come here for, right? If anyone came here for like structure and things, I mean, we live in hope every day that this is what's gonna happen here. But yeah, the cowl is made with favorite yarns of mine. It's using a chart from Sarbu. So yes, I know I said it wasn't going to be a Sarbu mitten club. Nobody said anything about not being any Sarbu anything. It's got a Sarbu chart, and we are going to get very acquainted with this chart. That's all I'm going to say. I hope you really like that chart, because we're going to see it again. All the accessories going to go really well together. They are going to go well together with the initial shawl as well, but obviously the shawl is lace and all the other patterns are Colorwork, and they are Colorwork with sort of similar-ish type yarns and tensions, but we're going to vary that a little bit as well. Going to get a little bit tighter for every pattern. I think that's a nice little spoiler. It's kind of, sort of. So I planned the 4 patterns in order of difficulty. So if you're someone who always wanted to get into Colorwork, I mean, I'm not really like advertising this club as like a beginner Colorwork, because that tends to get me a lot of funny emails. But it is. If you want to start Colorwork, the best thing to start with is honestly a cowl in the round, because it doesn't incorporate any shaping, but it also doesn't have a circumference that's like really small and difficult to work, but also really big and takes a lot of time, and it's going to be a lot of frogging if you make a mistake. So I think cowls are great, and that's a cowl you can do. It's only got 2 colors, which is also helpful. I think the chart repeat is fairly easy to follow. Always suggest printing out a chart to have or have on screen, but yeah, it's not a very difficult chart. It's a little bit harder than this for sure. This is a very, very easy chart. But yeah, so we're gonna kind of climb up the ladder there in difficulty. The last pattern isn't like the most difficult either, but it's sort of probably where I think most people who do Colorwork kind of want to get to. I think when you're there, you're like, you got it, you're good. You can do Colorwork, you can do different circumferences, you can do shaping, you're good. Off you go, go steak next time, I don't know. So that's what we got in that club. 3 more patterns to go. I am gonna do my very best to have them out in time for the holidays, in case if you want to make accessories for gifts or whatever. I don't have anything under the finished objects for this episode. I think these are my finished objects, because did I want to talk to you guys about them when I was making them? But I mean, I wasn't even recording at the time, and when I'm like months ahead of the release date, and I knew that at the time that I was making these. There's like no point in teasing you guys with something that you don't get to see for a while. That's not very nice. So I just really am very happy to be able to share it with you, especially that part where I was just charting it up and it all worked out so easily, the whole spreadsheet, and I was just casting it on and it was so quick, and I'm like, I can't believe it. What is this? It was good. It was very, very fun to show my flatmate, just like, look at this, I just did this. Anyway, this is what she has to live with. Someone light a candle for my flatmate. Honestly, she's got to listen to me as well. This is I got a whip. I got a work in progress that I started the other day, and it's under here somewhere. I have a new online friend. We talk on webcam a lot, and he's my nephew. He's really cute, and he's turning a year old in just like 2 days from the time of recording this. Probably by the time this is out, to be honest. He's a year old, but he's growing a lot, really fast. He's a big boy, and so he's outgrown that orange balaclava hat that I made him. That apparently is like the most practical thing I've ever knitted anyone, because it was worn so much, and my sister's like, it's too small now, we gotta have another one. Which is that like the most knit-worthy thing you've ever heard? She also wants me to make him socks. She wants socks as well, and I'm like, oh, socks. Do you remember those socks I was designing that I've never like actually finished? This is not on the program. I was gonna show you this. Can I just show you? They're done. I don't remember if I've shown you that I finished them, but I actually have finished them. I did finish them, but this is me in socks. I started this design in like 2018. I think so. I think it was very, very early 2018. Who's got memory? I don't. He's not coming out yet, but I'm teasing you. This is a teaser. Look at that. Me showing you stuff before they're coming out. Do you remember when I did that? So this is how long it can take me to finish a perfectly fine pair of socks. Here we are. That's a good close-up, isn't it? So now that my sister wants me to make her socks, and if I'm ever going to lose my knitting mojo again, that'll do it. But I mean, these did not. Thank goodness. They're very fun because they've got like a lot of variety. So you get to have fun with like a slightly different toe, bit of stockinette, then you increase, then you do a little heel situation, and then you get a very interesting chart and short rib. So it's like, for people who like variety, it's good for that. But I'm not actually not gonna push this yet. The only reason I thought it would be fun to mention those socks is for those of you who follow them for however many years they've taken me to make, because that's how much I knit socks. So it's really funny for me that my sister now is like, hey, can you just make me more socks and more socks and more socks? I'm like, he has 2 grandmas. Can he not just get his grandmas to make? Anyway, so I'm doing the hat. This is a lot of talking just to get to the point. I'm doing the hat for him. So this is the balaclava that I made it before. I've done like half the short row, so that's why we're getting this like weird cut, and I'm rounding it all the way back around again. And we get to work the neck in the round. I don't know if that's giving away too much secret sauce. I obviously don't want to do that, but it's a very smart constructed pattern. I like it. I think it comes in 2 kind of yarn thicknesses varieties, and I happen to have the one with the tightest gauge, requiring more fine yarn. And the yarn is actually a leftover yarn for a design commission that I did also a number of years ago for Yarn in the City, when they did that little London yarn guide. And I did a pair of mittens. They're called the Underground mittens. I kept calling them the Underworld mittens for however long. They're called the Underground mittens. They're just a pair of mittens inspired by the London Underground. So this is a undyed skein of Easy Knits yarn. So I'm not sure if I can call it an Easy Knits yarn, because obviously his yarns are dyed, but I used the undyed base and his colors for the rest of the mittens. I happen to still have a lot of the very bright green and blue, and also the dark contrast color. But I asked my sister which ones she wanted, and that was my whip, that was my knitting, that's all the knitting. What we have left now is acquisitions. You can see there's like an ocean of yarn behind me here. I mentioned in my kind of comeback episode that I had bought some skeins in Norway, particularly 2 skeins that I wanted to show you, but I could not find them. Again, it was one of those situations. I had no idea where I'd put them. I'd apparently put them in a bag of something I'd also forgotten what it was, which was all the other yarns that I bought this summer. Yeah, because apparently I went to a yarn shop this summer and promptly forgot. So that's what we're going to talk about the rest of this episode, is just all the yarn that has entered the stash. I went to Tribe yarn shop in London on the day of my first vaccine, because for some reason I got it into my head to book the vaccine at Wimbledon. Don't know if you know, but Wimbledon is like the Wimbledon AFC is a brand new football stadium that's never been used for football, because they just opened it before the lockdown and they just let people use it for the vaccine program. So all new, big, shiny, and totally other side of town. So I was like, hey, flatmate, why don't we make it a day in Richmond? Which is, honestly, I can recommend to anyone going to London. Take a day in Richmond. It's quaint, it's posh, it's very, very British, and you just have a day out there, and it feels it feels a bit more English than London sometimes, which I mean, I like London as London, but it's really nice to have a day out in Richmond with a river and still like our pubs, and have like a Sunday roast or whatever you do over there. I don't know. But there's a yarn shop there, which is Tribe Yarn, and I did get me some yarn. This yarn is just the worst at keeping in the bowl because it's linen, so it just wants to be all over the place. But look at that color. Look how that pops. Look at that blue. It's not the bluest linen you've ever seen. So I got 4 balls of this, naively thinking that's going to be enough for a little summer top. It was really hot that day, so that was literally all I could think about. So it's highly unlikely I'm going to be knitting any summer clothes now, looking at the situation out here now. But you know, there's always next year. Might do another summer collection, who knows? I really like doing that. It's just such a nice variety from what I normally do, because like my bread and butter is this is my thing. This is like, I could do this sleepwalking. Like I just that's not a phrase. But the summer collection stuff is just like, oh, this is where I'm like playing around with things and trying other things and just, yeah. So maybe that's what you'll become next time. I don't know. It's not a lot of yarn, so we're looking at something more tank top like or something. It's already feeling quite soft, which linen typically doesn't, so we like that. Yeah, Isager, which is Danish, and that's that. I also got another little summer top quantity. Actually, I want to talk a little about this sweater quantity, whatever that means. So someone asked me in the comment of the last video, literally today, which is why I remember, because if it had been 2 days ago, it would be gone. So I thought, let's take a break from the haul and talk about that for a bit. What is a sweater quantity? What is it? How much is that? The truth is that is a very relative term. A sweater quantity is whatever is enough to make you or the recipient a sweater. Obviously, the biggest factor determining that is what are your measurements and how much ease do you like? And how about sleeve length? Are you a bracelet sleeve, elbow sleeve? I find typically for me, when I say sweater quantities, it's for skeins, 400 gram skeins of fingering to sport weight yarn. Once I go up to DK, then it's more like probably more up to 5, and it's probably all the way up to Aran. I will need 5 skeins. That's 500 grams, which is why I'm always really excited when my worsted weight garments weigh less than half a kilo. That's just like, I don't know, I like when my garments aren't gonna weigh too heavy on, you know, everything else that I wear, and when I have to pack it away in my bag, and it's, you know, always a plus. So that's just gonna be different for different people. So while I need 4 to 5 skeins, that's my sweater quantity, someone who is smaller than me is gonna need maybe, say, 3 to 4 skeins. Someone bigger than me is gonna need 5 to 6 skeins, or 6 to 7 skeins, or, you know, it's all relative. But one thing I also want to emphasize is that these sweater quantity categories, if we're using 100 gram skeins as the count, they're very broad. So when I started making myself garments, I think I was about a 38-inch bust, maybe 40. I don't actually know. When I started this podcast, I think I was about 42 inches, and now I'm about 44. Probably 45 in the summer, but you know, it changes. We just change. And even though from 40 inches to 44, 45, I actually used the same amount of yarn-ish. Like, obviously I didn't use the same amount of yarn, but I could still use 4 to 5 skeins. I didn't have to like redo my whole sweater quantity in my yarn stash or anything. My size changed, but the amount of 100 gram skeins I needed did not change across these very different sizes. So I say it's a relative term, but there are only, you know, so many skeins you're gonna need one way or the other. That's subjective at the end of the day. I can't say for sure that 4 skeins is a sweater quantity universally. That's just not true. And I also find it a bit funny when some people who sell yarns in sweater quantities only sell them in numbers of 4 or 3. Yeah, there's no way on this planet that I will ever be able to make myself a sweater out of 300 gram skeins. Thank you very much. So, you know, that I think people need to be a bit careful about when they are selling sweater quantities, to have multiple categories. But most of the time when we use the word sweater quantities, we're just talking about ourselves, what we buy. I think that's all I have to say about that. Did that make sense? So how do you know what is a sweater quantity for you? Usually just if you knitted a bunch of garments in your life, you probably landed on a number. You've learned that, oh, most of the time you need so many skeins, so that's probably what you're going to keep buying when you don't have a pattern in mind. If you're going to get a bit ahead, if you haven't made that many garments yet and you just like to know everything before you start doing things, you know, we exist, we're out there, get all the information, then you're ready, kind of thing. I'm both. I suggest just going through a bunch of patterns. There's a lot of people who will put sizes and yarn amounts in their pattern, so you don't actually need the pattern. You can just look at the presentation page, because usually they will show you how much yarn you need before you buy it, so you know if you have enough yarn. And write down a bunch of them. Just get your measurement, the size you chose as measurement, and the amount of yarn. You can do that for a bunch of them, and you should get to a number. Look out for cables. Cables will typically add a lot of meters or yards to your knit. So a sweater quantity in stockinette is going to be different than a sweater quantity in cables. So maybe throw in another 100 gram skein in there or something like that. Lace tends to require less yarn, I find. Correct me if you disagree on that, but I found that. I don't typically find that texture change a lot of the yarn amount, actually. I think rib does. I think rib requires quite a bit. Colorwork, definitely, because you're on some places going to be needing 2 strands, not just 1, but also it's not double. This is actually a pretty common myth I'm happy to be busting now. A lot of people look at this and they're like, oh, That's going to be twice as thick as this. No, it's not. So here, where I'm using yellow and the blue yarn is just stranded behind, it's not going through the same sort of loops and in order. It's not, you know, knitted double. It's behind, just straight. There's just one yarn crossing the whole loop. So that's what? A third of the actual stitch. The length of yarn you need to make one stitch, so like this loop, is 3 times the width of the stitch. This is my thinking. It's not a precise science. So I'm using a third of the yarn for the non-used yarn than the yarn I'm knitting with. So what you would be adding here is, compared to the stockinette, you take 1/3 of the amount of yarn here and add here. So it's not double. So it's not going to be as thick as some people think. It's not double knitting. That would be different. That would be double, but this is Colorwork. So you're just adding a third, not double. I could have just said that. So that's sweater quantities. You basically usually figure it out as you go, or you cram down a bunch of different patterns. Make some notes of what sort of pattern it is, the gauge, things like that. Generally also when you've knitted a lot of garments, you know what length you like, you know the sleeve length, you know a lot of that. Unless you happen to be in a size that is, is it, 4 skeins or 5 skeins? I don't know. You usually know. I do happen to be between 4 and 5 skeins where it comes to where we enter like DK and worsted skeins. That's why I'm like, oh, I could do 4 skeins, but I probably need 5. Which is annoying, but you want to err on the side of caution there, for sure. You don't want to, we don't play yarn chicken here, unless you like crop tops, which I do, so I get away with that sometimes. Right, so I got more yarn at Tribe. See if I can, wow, 6. Okay, I got 6 of these. How cute are they? First of all, how adorable. Look at this, like little eggs. The color is obviously perfect. So this is my little chicklet here. What's that? And this is the yarn. Their brand. They're called Vinnis colors. Serina, 100% bamboo viscose. Now, I've never knitted with bamboo before, so that should be interesting. I'm very excited to try that. I am actually quite surprised. It's suggesting it at 26 stitch gauge. For reference, when I knit fingering weight, unless it's an accessory, if it's a garment, I tend to lean on 24 stitches. So 26 for this yarn, I think looks quite thick. Look at that, I think that looks quite thick. You can stretch it to be quite fine, but to me, it's very plump. So I think I'm gonna experiment a bit with that. I don't think we're gonna do 26 stitch gauge. I wanna see how loose this can go, because it's just a very nice, kind of full but light yarn. I may come to regret it, but that's kind of what I wanna try. Again, bamboo, this is a summer yarn. So we're gonna probably do another summer top, in June. Let's not think about that now. I say that though. I totally lost my whole brain to making a spreadsheet for next year's knitting plans. I can get so into these spreadsheets and love planning it. But when I have the plan, I don't want to do it. I want to follow my muse. I don't want to follow the plan. So anyway, I bought yarn when I was in Norway. This is yarn you have seen on here before. This is Sandnes Line. I got 5. Obviously, yarn amounts are going to be different for summer garments because, first of all these summer fibers behave totally differently, and you just want to have a lot less coverage. At least I do, because I get sweaty as a pig. And so I tend to just look at my previous summer tops. How much did I use there? Okay, let's just buy that and maybe a bit extra. That works for me. This is 50% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen, and it's really nice and soft. This yarn is notorious for growing though. I just want to put that out there. I did use this yarn before when I made the Shine top by Layla Raven, which is a lovely top that I love wearing in the summer. It's just so big and cozy. And this yarn was a perfect choice. Can absolutely recommend. It's far from the recommended yarn, but it actually worked out beautifully. Would have done it again. Wouldn't have guessed it, but it was just something I wanted to try. And yeah, so now I got some of this yarn for myself. 110 meters. So in Norway I would have called that a DK. Not that we call anything DK in Norway. We just go, how much? What's the needle size? Okay, I'll use a 4. Oh, 4 was not the right needle size. I will put this back to the shop and complain. And it's like, hey, have you measured your gauge? It's also gauge on here. And then they're like, okay, I'll measure my gauge. And then they come back to the shop again. I'm like, this yarn has the wrong gauge. This is a conversation me and a friend of mine in Norway have a lot. You can probably guess who it is. She runs a yarn shop. And it's... And this is why I talk so much about yarn gauge on here, and probably why I should continue, because there's a lot of people in Norway who are like, the yarn has gauge. This is what does it say here? 20 stitch gauge yarn can only be knitted at 20 stitches. Not 18, not 14, not 22, only 20. It's all down to your needle size and your tension. So let's talk about some of the other yarn I bought. We're all shocked to find that I bought some Finull. I bought these two. I was gonna make other accessories for the Matchy Matchy Club, but then I didn't, because that's obviously been knitted up into something else that is not this, not even these colors, which you could use. That'd be nice actually. Oh, that'd be really nice. I'm just looking at the sling right there. I don't know what these are gonna be now. Any pair mittens, anything. This is my go-to yarn for those of you who are new here. It's Rauma Finull. It's 100% Norwegian, goody white sheep wool. A little bit mixed with lambswool in the past few years, I've heard. 175 meters per 50 grams. And they have a new logo. They have a new label. Each to their own. It's not for me, but I also don't care. So I think, am I gonna be this person? I'm gonna be this person. I thought their previous branding on their skeins was just a lot more recognizable. It was like a lot of lines. You could see a Rauma skein far away. You just know. This looks like all the other yarn companies in Norway, especially like the cheaper ones that you find in like the corner shops rather than like in Nille shops like that, you know, which I love those yarns. They're great. But this is museum yarn. I think you could just as easily use Nille yarn and museum yarns, but I don't know why you would choose the same branding. Apparently they have gone with something folky in this typography. That's not what I'm getting when I'm looking at it, but hey, it's very simplistic. So was the previous bowl. I still love the yarn. It's great yarn. We'll always come back to this yarn. Anyway, what else? Ooh, oh, this is the part. Giving myself burns here doing this. I mentioned this yarn. I'm gonna just show you. When I made my comeback episode, and I could not find it. Couldn't find. No idea. Anyway, I found it. And oh, this yarn. This is the best yarn I bought when I was home in Norway. And I would never know how to find it if it hadn't been for the food festival. So we have an annual, I don't know if you know this about my hometown, we just like love a good festival. It's called Martna or Marked or something. That's a market, in case you couldn't tell. Trondheim and the Martnas, the markets, we love them. So I missed most of the markets this time around. I missed the farmers market, I missed the annual Martna, but the food festival happened and I was there because I would almost not have heard about it, but apparently my sister's boyfriend is like unofficially in charge of rigging all the tents for it. So I knew because of that. He was just busy doing that all the time, so I come over and entertain the baby. I can make anything about my nephew. Don't even worry about that. What's also funny about this festival is like I'm just so excited about like a Norwegian food festival. Like, okay, so Norwegian food is very bland. I'm not gonna lie, but the food festival food is something. Like, Norway is not known enough for its like amazing bakery stuff and cheese and other cheese and like the cured meats and just anything deer and reindeer, and I could go on and on. So I was very excited to see all of that, and I was filming it and I was putting it up on Instagram on the day, like just on temporary stories. And I'm like, wow, everyone else is really excited about this food as well, and they're all filming as well. Well, they're not wrong. Yeah, no, it was the mayor. She's like standing there with her mayor necklace, everything. So I'm like, okay, that was funny. Photobombed by the mayor. That's you know, as you do. Carrying on, keeping on filming. And I'm finding this like amazing, like huge dish of this like reindeer kebab thing. I'm like, oh yes, we're filming this. Oh yeah, close up. Everyone else is filming too. Yeah, I get what people are into. Like, I get this. This is good. I'm getting some of this. I'm looking at my photo. I'm like looking up. Like, yeah, that's the guy who was last week or so elected Prime Minister of Norway. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he's got excellent taste in food market food, so love that for him. We got the same food. Great stuff. Happy story. And at the end, I found this yarn booth. So most of the food festival is just food, but if you go all the way up to the cathedral, and there were a bunch of different stalls there, and they were more crafty and handmade stuff, and one of them sold yarn. And I was like, bolted to the yarn booth. This cute little hut there, and I'm just like, oh, looking at everything. And finally this woman comes over who's running the stall, and I'm probably scared her because I get so excited about yarn, and you know, most people in Norway are kind of like, yarn is nice. Where's the alpaca? That's Norway. And so it's one like, you know, they're not the softest, but, and I'm like interrupting her. Don't worry about it. I love that yarn. It's great. And I found this, which I was sold. This feels so good. It's not mega soft. It's not like, let me. Do you know, it's not that far off. This is merino. It's not merino soft, but it's not that far off. It's a little bit harsher. This is Grå Trøndersau by Holum Gård. Hey, there we are. There's Holum Gård. This is the grey Trønder sheep. That's how we pronounced it. So Trønder is just anyone who's from Trøndelag, i.e. me, and a sheep that is from Trøndelag. But it's a particular breed, Trønder sheep. Okay, let me see if I can translate this label on the go. The yarn is wool from our own sheep, which are grassing, whatever, in this particular mountain in Meldal. The sheep are sheared in the autumn, and the wool is sorted on Holum Gård before it's sent to a spinnery, which spins it to amazing yarn. Our yarn is made in small, I'm going to use the word dye lots, they're not dyed, but you know. So it's a good idea to buy what you need. So that's why I got two, because I kind of wanted to do a hat, but I wanted to do cables because this yarn is nice and round. It pops. But as I was saying earlier, when you add cables, sometimes you just need a lot more yarn than you think. So while it's unlikely that I'll have to use two skeins for like 100 grams, you never really know. And worst case scenario, I'll be making two hats. But I was just amazed at how round this yarn, given it is actually a 2-ply. Oh, the focus is going to work with me now. That's nice. So you can see that here. I'm not like tensioning it too much. Yeah, that's nice and round yarn. 200 meters per 100 grams. I can't imagine I'll need more than 200 meters for a hat. So we'll see what this becomes. I do want to design with this. I really have no... I don't think I've heard about Holum Gård before. So hi, if anyone knows of their stuff. I literally just saw it for the first time at this market. And I just want to design or knit with Norwegian yarn, especially like small producers and things like that. It just makes me really happy, especially with this very, very local to me sheep breed. Okay, so we have two last skeins before I wrap up this episode that ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would, but they always do, don't they? This yarn was sent to me by G-Uld. It was quite an ordeal. Took a number of months because, you know, pandemic, and I am going to design with it. That's all I'm going to say for now. Look at this. Hand dyed, naturally dyed on non-superwash, woolly New Zealand lambswool. So if you don't recognize this, it is actually the same yarn that I knitted the Hauglund cardigan and pullover in. It's just a different color, because this color, I needed this color, and so something shall be made out of these two. I have it in my head. Usually when it's in my head, it's good, especially when it's stayed there for that long. And I think that's it. That's all I have for this episode. I have honestly nothing personal to add. I usually always end up these episodes on a personal note, and I feel like I got very little to say, perhaps because it hasn't been so long since last time, so there's not much new really. I'm still just trying to force myself into making the final edits of my thesis. So just to recap, for those of you who don't know, when you pass your PhD Viva in the UK, the most common result is revisions. It used to be called minor revisions, so that minor and major. I actually got the time scale of a major revision, even though what I got would have been a minor revision, but they don't make that distinction anymore. I just asked for more time because I knew I would be a little bit tired after the initial Viva, and I was right to do that because we're getting close to the 6-month mark, and it's so boring. It's just awfully boring. It's like you gotta fix up like tiny little things like typos and like my captions for the text. It's like I literally want to do anything else. So I'm getting all of these amazing creative ideas for all sort of things that I want to do, and like not even just knitting, but just like anything. Like I want to start like 2 other podcasts about totally different subjects. I'm just like, I think about this all the time now, which is why I now have this microphone on the top of the camera that you can't see, but it is there, and it's hopefully making a lot better sound on the podcast. Not that it was bad before, but it's, you know, that's just the sort of thing I want to do when I have to do incredibly mundane things. So that's where that's at now. Once I get to the deadline and obviously I've finished things, it's actually done. Like for real. Like I already know I've passed, but it's like, why is it like this in the UK? I had a friend of mine who just finished her PhD in Norway, and she's just like instant doctor. I mean, I'm probably instant doctor too, but I don't feel like I can until it's, you know, the last nitpicky stuff is done. After that, I have to start writing up my research and actually get it published. I should have done that ages ago, but it's kind of hard to do that when you're running a business at the same time. It's just like, it's a lot of things going on. So I got to do a lot of science after this as well. And then I'm going to be teaching because they need a lot of teachers at university because they're trying to do teaching in person again. But yeah, London is kind of going back to normal. And I actually hadn't realized this. Like I need to look more at the data, and I did that when I was looking at whether I was going to Yarndale or not, and I opted not to in the end because a lot of the places on the path to Yarndale it's got a lot more COVID stuff happening than what we got down in London. London is apparently doing pretty good. Who knew? So that's why I didn't go, and I kind of regret it. It would have been so much fun, and I love going to Skipton. It's lovely up there, and I'm always really happy going to the north. It just feels right. Yeah, I'm trying not to think about it too much. I hope you guys had fun. But things are opening up in London, and we can actually do things now and meet people, and I've actually already made a number of friends that I didn't even know before lockdown. So that's been cool, being a social person again. Who would have thought? It's good to be back, coming out of the cave, a PhD behind me, and I can't complain. The thing I will complain about though is, you know, the sheer distance between me and my nephew and how there aren't any teleportals. And this is important, by the way, teleporters. You don't want teleporters because teleporters will disintegrate you and rebuild you back up again on the other side where you're going. I'd rather have a teleportal that I can pass through undisintegrated. I've thought about this. This is... Am I stalling because I have to go back to my PhD work after this? Also, I'm not going to dignify that question with an answer. So yes, I am thinking about going back to Norway. I do want to, but also Norway is the most just radically depressing country between like October and February. But I can't bear the thought of not seeing my nephew until like March, you know, so I'm gonna have to figure out something clever there. We'll see. But yeah, that's all I have for you in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are having, you know, a happy, crafty, nitty life and all that stuff, and that I'll see you next time. Bye.